Chapter 46-25. After Qin Shin said that, He Huan was stunned. Her gaze fell on Qin Chen's face. After a long time, it moved to Qin Mo. She and Qin Mo were married? He Huan's lips trembled slightly. In her heart, she was 18 years old. The person she liked was Rongyu, not Qin Mo. Yes, she liked Qin Mo, but that was a long time ago. Later on, she was afraid of him. Why was it 2019 when she woke up? Why did she marry Qin Mo? He Huan almost couldn't believe it. She bit her lower lip and stayed in a daze for a while. Suddenly, she lifted the quilt and wanted to jump out of bed, regardless of her sore muscles. Qin Shin called her, but He Huan didn't want to listen at all. She just wanted to leave. She had just moved a little when her elbow was held by a strong hand. He Huan turned around and saw that it was Qin Mo in 2019. It was said that she had been married to Qin Mo for several years. She used to be so afraid of his Qin Mo. She didn't like Qin Mo anymore. The one she liked now was Rongyu. But where was Rongyu? She wanted to go find him. Qin Mo's expression didn't look good. He kept staring at her, and his voice was frighteningly hoarse. Where are you going? Without waiting for He Huan's answer, he looked up at Qin Shin. Go out first. Qin Shin was a little speechless. He Huan had lost part of her memory. Sigh, shouldn't she go for a checkup when she finally woke up? Why was she talking about these small feelings? Besides, if He Huan wanted to find Rongyu, she should go. Rongyu was married and had AI Meng Meng by his side. Wouldn't He Huan just give up if she went? Qin Mo was just too domineering. He couldn't understand this point either. However, under Qin Mo's gaze, even Qin Shun did not dare to stay any longer and immediately left. After the door was closed, Qin Mo looked at He Huan. His eyes were very faint, but other than that, there was also a trace of pain. It was a pain that He Huan could not understand. She couldn't understand it. He Huan's lips moved slightly, and her voice was also soft. Qin Mo stared into her eyes and asked slowly, Are you looking for Rongyu? He Huan's lips moved, but she didn't say anything. Qin Mo was still talking to her in a very calm voice. We have been married for 7 or 8 years. We have a child named Qin Huan, which means that Qin Mo's sweetheart is He Huan. I have never told you this before. We also have a child named Shun Ting, who is 13 years old. You like him very much. Before you lost your memory, our family was very happy. By the way, your movie has been very popular these days. It has already exceeded 1 billion in 5 days. The scriptwriter is Rongyu, and the third female lead is Rongyu's wife. Her name is AI Meng Meng. He finished quietly, but He Huan's face was already a little pale. She couldn't accept such news. Suddenly, she broke free from his hand, stumbled to the bathroom, and ran in front of the mirror. She looked at her face slowly in the mirror. That face was definitely not the face that the 18-year-old He Huan had, especially her eyes, which contained too many things. He Huan's lips trembled slightly, and she couldn't say a word. Qin Mo also appeared in the mirror, looking at her indifferently. He Huan and his eyes met in the mirror, but neither of them spoke. For He Huan, such news was explosive. When she woke up, the man she was so afraid of had become her husband, and he had been married for many years and had a child. Rongyu, whom she liked, also had a wife. Chapter 46-26. He Huan's eyes met Qin Mo's. After a long while, she lowered her eyes and said in a low voice, Qin Mo, I want to calm down. As soon as she finished speaking, he carried her by the waist. He Huan exclaimed. Amidst his exclamation, he gently placed her on the bed. His fingers touched her forehead gently. I'll call Qin Shun over to check on you. He Huan subconsciously wanted to avoid his fingers, but Qin Mo still turned her little face over. He didn't do anything else. He just reached out to pinch her chin and carefully looked at her little face, not letting go of any expression on her face. He Huan's lips trembled slightly. She suddenly felt a little angry and turned her face away. Qin Mo was also a little angry. The more worried he was before, the more angry he was now. He stared at her. You're still thinking about him, aren't you? He Huan's stubborn temper flared up. She pursed her lips and didn't speak. Qin Mo's eyes were filled with coldness. He stared at her and said slowly, You'll see him in the future. But before that, you have to stay here and be my wife. When was Huan's memory of waking up? It was when she was rebellious. It was when she disliked Qin Mo the most. Almost everything he said and did was wrong. Of course, Huan couldn't stand his tone. She pursed her lips and stared at him. Qin Mo's eyes also looked at her quietly, without the slightest emotion. Very well. She looked at him with that kind of gaze and that kind of mood, so he didn't have to be polite to her. Qin Mo gritted his teeth as he thought about it, but his heart was extremely sad. After staring at her for a while, he finally walked to the window and didn't want to talk to her. Huan pursed her lips and moved a little, but Qin Mo seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. His voice was deep and hoarse. "You better not think about running away. Think about your parents and Romeo." Huan sat on the bed and narrowed her eyes. "Are you threatening me?" "Yes." Qin Mo's voice came over. "I'm threatening you. It's not the first time I've done this, so you'd better be good and not make me angry." Huan was a little confused, but that was what Qin Mo had always done in the past. She stared at him coldly for a while before lying down. She pulled up the blanket and ignored him. Qin Mo turned around and stared at her. Then, there was a hint of suppression and restraint in his eyes. The 18-year-old Huan was just like that. He could even guess that she must hate him to death right now. Also, she must want to rush to Rong Yu's side, as if she hated him to the core and couldn't wait. Just thinking about it made Qin Mo want to strangle her. However, he could only think about it. He couldn't bear to do it. In the end, he was the one who was angry. After a long time, Qin Mo said, "I'll ask Qin Shun to come over." In fact, Qin Shun came over on his own. He opened the door and poked his head in. The handsome Dr. Qin was rarely mischievous. "Have you thought about it?" Qin Mo stared at her. "Get in here." Qin Shun smiled. "The word get out is better used. Besides, I'm the best doctor here. It's not appropriate for me to say get out to you, right?" Qin Mo was still frowning. "Why do you have so much nonsense? Get in here." Chapter 46:27. Qin Mo was still frowning. "Why are you talking so much nonsense? Get in here." Qin Shun came in with a smile. That was true. What was the use of getting so angry? They could just nurture each other. He already had a love rival, so what was there to be afraid of? Besides, Huan would definitely like Huan and Shunting. What was there to be afraid of with the two kids in her hands? Qin Shun came over, but Huan's head was still covered. She walked to the bedside and pulled back a corner of the quilt. She said teasingly, "I checked, little Huan Huan." Little Huan Huan was exclusive to Huan when she was in her teens. Now that Huan was in her teens, Qin Shun called her that. Qin Mo's face darkened, and he wanted to strangle his sister. At this moment, Qin Shun pulled back the quilt and was stunned. Huan was crying. Her small body was curled up on the white hospital bed, looking very pitiful. Her hair covered half of her face, and there was a trace of light on the other half that was not covered. That is, she's crying. Although Qin Shun was a woman, she was very protective of the fair sex. Seeing this scene, she immediately looked at Qin Mo and asked silently, "What did you do to her?" Everyone knew how good Qin Mo was to Huan, but sometimes he could be as bad as Huan. That was why Qin Shun asked this. At this moment, Qin Mo pursed his lips and stared at Huan in horror. His voice was low and cold. "Who are you crying for?" Qin Shun almost fainted. "Why are you still asking this at this time? Second brother, why don't you go out first or sleep in my room? I'll stay here with you. It's easier for us women to communicate," Huan said. Qin Mo's voice was even colder. "What kind of woman are you? Only Lan Yu treats you as a woman." Qin Shun was about to go berserk. What did Qin Mo say? This bridge was torn down, and Qin Mo hadn't even crossed it yet. However, seeing that he might not have a wife for a long time in the future, she tolerated it. Anyway, he was a pitiful person, and he must be hateful. Qin Shun felt much better after thinking about it. He was about to reach the peak of his life. Although Qin Mo said this, he knew that he couldn't fight with Huan now. But she was crying now. Before he left, he wiped her tears with a tissue and threatened, "If you cry again, I'll let Qin Shun give you an injection." Qin Shun was a little confused. Qin Mo was sure that she was unhappy now. She was actually enjoying looking at him, but she could only think about it. She didn't dare to say it out. After Qin and Mo said that, Huan buried her face in the pillow. She didn't want to talk to that hateful man. How could she like Qin and Mo before? And all of this was seen by Qin Shun. He was angry and amused at the same time. Huan, who was 18 years old, was against Qin and Mo, who was 40 years old. In the future, the Qin family would probably be in chaos again. For her, well, this should be a good show to watch. After Qin and Mo left, Qin Shun stopped joking. He sat on the bed with a sigh and touched Huan's shoulder. Qin and Mo is gone. Don't cry. After talking for a long time, Huan didn't move. Qin Shun turned her around. Well, you've made enough trouble. Let me check. Huan lay on the bed and stared at Qin Shun. After a long time, she asked softly, "You became a doctor?" Chapter 46:28. Seeing that she had spoken, Qin Shun smiled. Yeah, and he's a very good doctor. Huan sat up and stared at Qin Shun. Qin Shun let her stare. After a while, Huan tugged at Qin Shun's hair and said in a low voice, "Everything has changed since I woke up. Qin Shun, you're not the same as before. You look." Qin Shun teased her. "Am I more manly now?" Huan looked up with tears in her eyes. "No, I'm not manly anymore." Qin Shun fell down. But after a while, she coughed. "Actually, I'm married. Of course I'm looking for a man. His name is Lanyu. He's a great man." Huan was stunned. After a while, she said softly, "He must be better than Qin and Mo." Qin Shun laughed. She tugged at Huan's hair. "Actually, before you woke up, you and Qin and Mo were in love. Really, you went through a lot. But in the end, you got together. It's not Yu or anyone else. It's Qin and Mo. As for the rest, you can ask Qin and Mo to tell you later. Now let's check." Huan didn't say anything and followed Qin Shun to check. In the end, it was still the small blood clot at the back of her head. There was no sign of it getting bigger or smaller. Qin Shun put away her thoughts and smiled faintly. Fortunately, there's no big problem. She reached out and touched Huan's little head. "From now on, enjoy your 18 years. Not everyone has such an opportunity. Make good use of it." Huan was a little shocked. She stared at Qin Shun for a long time. Qin Shun smiled and used Qin Mo's sharp tongue. "He Xiaowan, you're 33 years old. Now you're 18 years old. Are you happy?" Huan was shocked again. After a long time, she finally said in a low voice, "Who would wake up 15 years older and still be happy?" Qin Shun said with a smile, "You've enjoyed all these years. What kind of person is Qin and Mo? All the women in B City want to have him. Are you still not satisfied?" Huan was tired and sat there quietly. After a while, she said in a low voice, "I don't know if it's because of me. Maybe it's because we grew up together, so I don't feel much about marrying him." Qin Shun really wanted to look up to the sky and roar. To be honest, when she was young, Qin Shun was also very fond of her second brother. She had always wondered which woman was worthy of him. But now Huan said that she didn't have any feelings for him. He wondered if Qin and Mo would vomit blood if he found out. Although Qin Shun wanted to vomit blood, he still remembered the important matter at hand. He looked at the time and said, "It's getting late. You should sleep for a while and recover your energy. Tomorrow morning, we will do a comprehensive checkup." Huan nodded and pulled up the blanket to cover her head. She looked like she was throwing a tantrum. Qin Shun couldn't help but laugh. Huan's temper was really the same as before. She reached out and rubbed Huan's head. "All right, time to sleep." Huan's head popped out a little and looked at her eagerly. "Want a good night kiss?" Qin Shun smiled. Huan's reaction was to cover her head again. Qin Shun smiled again and didn't say anything else. He took a small blanket and went to the sofa to lie down. Huan looked at her quietly and didn't say anything. She just lay there, quietly lying there. Then, tears welled up in the corner of her eyes. To Huan, Ronyu was still hers. But when she woke up, he belonged to someone else, and she belonged to Qin and Mo. Chapter 46:29. This was unacceptable to Huan. In her memory, Qin and Mo was particularly despicable. He always bullied her in all kinds of ways, and was fierce to her. He would take her to some places and force her to drink red beans. The person she hated the most was Qin Mo. Huan's tears never stopped as she thought about it. The more Rongyu was, the better. How did he become someone else's? What was Rongyu like in 19 years? Huan wanted to know, but she knew that if she couldn't find him after so many years, she lost Rongyu. Huan tilted her face and rested it on the pillow. She couldn't fall asleep for a long time. It wasn't until the middle of the night when her light went out that she finally fell into a deep sleep. However, there were still a few drops of tears on her little face. When Qin Mo came over at 3 in the morning, he saw her crying. He stood there, knowing in his heart who she was crying for. However, he could only lie to himself and tell himself that it was only temporary. She would eventually think of him, and the person she loved was himself. However, he tried so hard to persuade her, but he couldn't. Because she didn't love him, she only had Rongyu in her heart now. Late at night, Qin Mo stood quietly in front of Huan's bed. The fact that she could remember him was actually a happy ending, but he seemed to prefer that she didn't remember anyone than that she still liked Rongyu. Admit it, Qin Mo. You are jealous. You are crazily jealous of Rongyu, a man that you feel is inferior to you in every way. There was a hint of disappointment in Qin Mo's eyes. Perhaps because of his gaze, Huan actually woke up. She opened her eyes and quietly stared at the man in front of the bed. She only opened her eyes a slit, and this made her eyes look completely black, making her look even more innocent. Qin Mo also stared at her. Finally, Huan spoke in a soft and fragile voice. How did we get married? Qin Mo's face was a little depressed, and his Adam's apple moved slightly. Then he said softly, naturally we got married. Huan, you used to like Rongyu, but I've always liked you. Nothing has changed. Probably because he was too angry, he left immediately after he finished speaking. He didn't know whether he was angry at her for not remembering these days, or he was angry at himself for not protecting her. However, things had already happened and could not be undone. He didn't know how long it would take for her to remember. Qin said it might be a week, a month, or forever. Qin told him to be prepared. It would be best if Huan could fall in love with him again. Just like that, everything was resolved because no one knew what would happen in the future. How could it be so easy to fall in love again? Qin Mo knew Huan too well. He sighed softly and said nothing at last, but stood for a moment in the doorway. It was a sleepless night, so he decided to drive back to the company. In the underground parking lot, he met the so-called male fan. He only asked a few words casually and then made him disappear. The screams continued in the distance, but Qin Mo was very calm. He stood where he was, lit a cigarette, and smoked quietly. Secretary, he was also a poor person. President Qin actually let her arrange such a bloody thing. At this moment, Secretary, he came over and said in a low voice, this person has been dealt with, but what did President Qin say to AI Jia? Chapter 4630. Qin Mo looked up at Secretary He. Secretary He had been with him for a long time, but she was still a little intimidated by Qin Mo's gaze. It was indescribably cold. She braced herself and said in a low voice, Miss AI's movie has been completely banned and her past has been dug up. She's in a terrible state now. No one will dare to hire her to make a movie in the future, and she will have to pay a huge sum of money for breaching the contract. President Qin, do you still want to continue? With that, he threw away the cigarette, but in his hand, and got into the car. Qin Mo looked at her for a long time before saying, let's leave it at that for now. Secretary, he stared at his back and sighed in his heart. President Qin had always treated AI Jia differently. He was still giving her some face. However, Secretary, he did not know that this was already the biggest blow to AI Jia. It didn't matter if she didn't act in a movie. What mattered was that she had to lose money. Moreover, she had invested a lot of money in this commercial blockbuster, and it was all gone in an instant. Most importantly, everyone in the industry knew that she had offended Qin Mo. Although they did not know the reason, everyone had a tacit understanding to boycott AI Jia. No one dared to work with her. Even if AI Jia wanted to borrow money to repay the debt, no one would be willing. In an instant, AI Jia had fallen from being a superstar to being miserable. As for why it was so miserable, She knew it in her heart. She had invested 300 million, plus the tens of millions for breaching the contract. She had lost everything. Her assets were also 300 to 400 million, but most of them were fixed assets, so she was missing 70 to 80 million. If it was in the past, it would not have been a problem. But it was different now. She was an A-list celebrity, but no one wanted her to be a spokesperson or participate in any commercial activities. In just 3 days, her life had changed dramatically. AI Jia began to feel anxious. She looked around for ways to beg people, and even to accompany people for a sum of money. Smiling, drinking, and accompanying people were things that she had disdained to do in the past. But even so, sometimes the company was in vain. She had been taken advantage of and drunk to the point of vomiting, but in the end, she had only signed 1 million. 1 million was nothing to AI Jia in the past, but now she was treated like that for the sake of 1 million. After being humiliated, AI Jia vomited as hard as she could in the bathroom. She lifted her head and looked at herself in the mirror. Deep down, she knew why she was in such a miserable state. She shouldn't have provoked Yuan, but she just couldn't accept it. Why did everyone else get happiness, but she didn't? She couldn't accept this. She washed herself thoroughly with cold water and then carefully fixed the makeup on her face. She knew in her heart that as long as Qin Mo did not forgive her, she would never have a chance to make a comeback. She had underestimated He Huan's position in Qin Mo's heart. It turned out that he loved her so much. However, judging from Qin Mo's revenge, something must have happened to He Huan. It was impossible for such a serious injury to be completely fine. AI Jia wanted to know what it was. However, the hospital was heavily guarded, and she had no way of getting close to He Huan. AI Jia thought that if something happened to He Huan, Qin Mo would never let him off. She suddenly smiled in front of the mirror. She wasn't the most unhappy person. It was Qin Mo. Qin Mo seemed to have the power to decide everyone's life and death. AI Jia's smile was a little strange. Ha ha ha. Qin Mo was also miserable. At least he was in pain now. She walked out, and in the hallway, she met the man who was accompanying her today. The man was hugging another woman, looking at her with a cautious expression. AI Jia suddenly felt a wave of nausea, but she forced herself to smile at the man. Oh, the woman beside the man kept smiling. She probably knew him because there was a touch of provocation in her eyes. In the past, AI Jia would never have such a woman in her eyes, but now, the woman was young and easily defeated her. At that moment, AI Jia felt that she was very old. She didn't think so before, but at this moment, she really realized that she was almost 40 years old and was no match for these young women. Was that why Qin Mo didn't care about her? Was it because He Huan was younger than her and looked like a little girl? Was that why he loved her so much? After the man left with the woman in his arms, AI Jia finally couldn't help but rush back to the bathroom. She leaned on the sink and vomited. She almost vomited until her bile was gone. She raised her head and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face, which she had always been proud of, looked extraordinarily old at this moment. Perhaps she was really old. So she chuckled softly. Yes, I'm old. That's why I'm defeated. I lost to Yi Huan and to a woman who couldn't even be seen in public. Chapter 46:31. Memorize in a second. When AI Jiao walked out of the clubhouse, the lights on the streets were already waning. She felt lost on the streets. She had become famous at a young age and was a well-deserved Best Actress. She had always been surrounded by people. She had never felt so lonely before. Moreover, after such an unbearable thing had happened, he felt even more unbearable. She walked to her car and opened the door. Just as she was about to get in, AI Jia's gaze suddenly froze. She looked at the man and woman in front of her quietly. She was very familiar with that woman. She could recognize her even if she turned into ashes. It was AI Meng Meng. AI Meng Meng, who she had thought could no longer make a comeback, was her good sister, a village girl who had crawled out of a ravine. At this moment, she was walking shoulder to shoulder with Romeo. She was wearing a man's jacket and holding a skewer in her hand. She was eating as she walked. The man beside her was helping her with her handbag. His expression was gentle, and there was even a hint of affection in his eyes. AI Jia looked at them quietly. Looking at AI Mingming's happiness, her eyes were a little sore and a little bitter. She looked down and saw herself in a long red dress in the middle of the night. If it had been in the past, it would have been dazzling and eye-catching. But now, she felt like she was in a sorry state. She was in a sorry state. She gritted her teeth and was about to leave when she looked up to find AI Mingming looking at her. AI Mingming's gaze was a little complicated, but it wasn't the adoration or servility like before. There wasn't even fear. All that was left was calmness. AI Jia looked at AI Mingming quietly too. Their eyes met. AI Jia thought to herself, why was AI Mingming not afraid of me? Was it because King Entertainment was backing her up? But AI Jia had never thought that it wasn't because of King Entertainment, but because of Rong Yu. She had Rong Yu's companionship and love. The missing part of AI Mingming's heart had been filled by life after marriage. In her heart, she was no worse than AI Jia. She even had something that AI Jia didn't have. After a long time, AI Mingming looked away and raised her head to meet Rong Yu's eyes. She smiled softly. There was relief in that small smile. She didn't hate AI Jia anymore. It was because of these hurts that she had met Rong Yu, the person she liked. The unbearable pain and hurt in the past had now become beautiful because they had met again. Rong Yu lowered his head and silently looked at his little wife. Why are you suddenly smiling so foolishly? AI Mingming shook her head. No, it's just that I suddenly feel that you're pretty. Rong Yu laughed. He reached out and gently pinched her nose. Why did you suddenly say such nice things? That's not like you, Mrs. Young. AI Mingming wrinkled her nose slightly. You know about it again. After a pause, he continued, I just think that you're good-looking. Rong Yu chuckled delightedly. I'm just accompanying you out for a barbecue skewer, and you're already speaking so nicely. If there's anything else, wouldn't Mrs. Rong have something better to say? AI Mingming glanced at him, and her entire little face became lively. Actually, she was not a very beautiful girl, but married life was really wonderful. Even her entire appearance looked much more dazzling than before. This was probably the power of love. She looked at him and smiled, and he smiled back. In the end, maybe it was because of love, she couldn't help but throw herself into his arms. Chapter 4632. Memorized in the middle of the night. Rong Yu suddenly felt warm. Then he looked down at his arms. The little girl who gave him warmth. Mingming always thought that he was the one taking care of her in life, but she did not know that in fact, he was the one who relied on her. After such a long time, she had already become a part of his life. Sometimes in the middle of the night, when he suddenly woke up, he would quietly look at her under the faint moonlight. At that time, he would think, if not for Mingming, what would he be like now? He probably wasn't happy. Every day, he wrote scripts, wrote other people's love stories, and then he missed a woman who didn't belong to him. And now that he had Mingming, how happy he was, AI Mingming did not know. She also did not know that she had the ability to make him happy. She was simply a little fool. Now that this little fool had bumped into his arms, he was caught off guard. His originally calm heart suddenly became boiling hot. He wanted to kiss her, but they were on the street, so he was a little distressed. He didn't know what to do, how to express his emotions. Only, he slowly tightened his arms, carefully hugging her in his embrace, treasuring her. Rong Yu lowered his head and looked at her raised face. His voice was slightly hoarse. Why are you suddenly acting like a spoiled child? AI Mingming pressed her face against his neck. It was a little cold, but after a while, it became warm again. After staying like this for a while, she whispered, I'm not acting coquettishly. I just want to feel your warmth. As she spoke, her brows were especially delicate and pretty, indescribably adorable. No matter how much he restrained himself, he couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her. This kiss was especially warm in the middle of the night. AI Mingming looked at him quietly. After a long time, she murmured, Do you like me? His answer was to gently tug at her hair and helplessly say, What do you think, Mrs. Rong? AI Ming Ming was still looking at him. There was a hint of a smile in her eyes, as well as the unique spirit of a young girl. Her little lips even curled up slightly. I think you like me. After saying that, she looked at him. Rongyu patted her gently and said briskly, "Let's go home." He pressed down on her shoulders and gently led her forward. AI Ming Ming continued to eat the skewers in her hands. As she ate, she blurted out, "I haven't finished eating yet." Just like a piglet, Rongyu sighed softly. "Fortunately, I'm only raising one." After AI Ming Ming finished eating, she threw the skewer away and looked at him strangely. "What's wrong?" Rongyu chuckled. "Why do I feel that Mrs. Rong has a request?" AI Ming Ming snorted softly. "It's definitely not what you think." He smiled happily. "If not, you can tell me about it. I don't want to say it." AI Ming Ming snorted, then put his arm around her waist and walked towards the apartment. "It's getting late. It's time for old people to sleep." He chuckled. "Are you sure I'm an old man?" For some reason, AI Ming Ming's face turned red. He didn't say anything overboard, but she was a little shy. However, he did not know that it was because he liked her that he would be like this. "Rongyu, I think I like you too." She suddenly stopped and whispered. Mr. Rong looked at her with amusement. "Be reserved, Mrs. Rong." AI Ming Ming bit her lower lip and looked down. It was eaten by the puppy. Chapter 46:33. It's free to read. Rongyu chuckled. "Oh, the puppy tried a lot of things just now." AI Ming Ming immediately exploded. "I'm not a puppy. Aren't you?" He patted her head. "The puppy has gone home. Aren't you?" He stroked her little head. "The puppy has gone home." AI Ming Ming didn't move. Rongyu chuckled again. "You're not going home? Then I'll go find another puppy." She tugged at his hand. "A puppy is a puppy." Rongyu laughed again. "Where's your restraint? Where's your backbone?" "I don't need it anymore," she said sulkily. Rongyu was even happier. He kissed her forehead and said, "Oh, you have me. That's enough." She blushed again. Shameless. Rongyu only smiled. After they left, AI Jia still stood there in the cold wind and watched them leave. She noticed that AI Ming Ming had only glanced at her for a moment. After that, she didn't look at her anymore. Only Rongyu. AI Jia didn't know what kind of situation could make someone forget their pain so quickly. She had always thought that AI Ming Ming would be afraid when she saw her, but she didn't. She was a woman immersed in happiness. There was a trace of hatred in AI Jia's eyes. This little bitch didn't care about him at all. She had forgotten who she was. Rongyu brought AI Ming Ming home. After all, his health wasn't good, so he immediately took a hot bath. AI Ming Ming cleaned up the room alone. As she thought about it, she couldn't help but smile. But later, she couldn't help but think of AI Jia. She used to admire her, but now she was afraid of her. She also noticed that AI Jia was different from before. She looked haggard and only wore a long dress on such a cold day. She knew that her movies had been taken off the shelves, banned in various ways, and owed a lot of money. That was probably why she came out to socialize. AI Ming Ming didn't feel happy. Those fame and fortune fairs weren't that important to her anymore. Perhaps she was a little sad, but she didn't know if it was for herself or for someone else. She was lost in her thoughts and did not notice Rongyu coming out. In the warm room, Rongyu was wearing a bathrobe. As soon as he walked out of the bathroom, he saw his wife daydreaming while making the bed. He walked over and hugged her gently from behind, his head lowered against her neck. "What are you thinking about?" AI Ming Ming was shocked and tilted her head. "You've recovered." He chuckled. "I'm asking what you're thinking about." "No." She subconsciously avoided it and lowered her eyes to hide herself. However, they had been husband and wife for a long time after all. How could he not know what she was thinking? He was still hugging her, and his voice was hoarse. He said hesitantly, "I think I saw AI Jia in the parking lot just now." Just as he finished speaking, the body in his arms stiffened. "What's wrong?" Rongyu whispered into her ear. AI Ming Ming's mind was in a mess. "Nothing. I'm going to take a shower." He had only taken 2 steps when his arm was caught. She turned her head and bit her lips. "Rongyu." He smiled faintly. "It won't take too long. Accompany me." She stared at him and finally understood what he meant. She had already forgotten about the previous topic. She was sure that he had mentioned AI Jia unintentionally and did not think too much about it. She heaved a sigh of relief and looked at him. I'll take a shower first. Oh. Chapter 4634. Memorize. Ronyu looked at her quietly, then smiled. Go. I'll make the bed. Only then did AI Mingming notice that she hadn't finished her work. She wanted to say that she would do it, but she really needed to be alone for a while to calm down. So she nodded and immediately ran into the bathroom, closing the door. At a place where she could not see, Ronyu was standing there with an unfathomable gaze. There were many things that Mingming did not know. For example, AI Jia offended Qin and Mo. For example, Huan was hospitalized. How was she now? Even he himself did not know. Mingming didn't know any of that. Ronyu was a scriptwriter. He had the most sensitive intuition. When he mentioned AI Jia just now, Mingming seemed to have a big reaction. Moreover, their surnames were all AI. Ronyu was suspicious, but he did not want to alarm her. The previous incident might have something to do with AI Jia. Just thinking about it made his heart ache a little, an indescribable feeling. He was her husband, but he had never been able to help her investigate, and could only accompany her to heal. He did not want to open her scars, but he was afraid that those injuries would come again. He lit a cigarette and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, smoking from time to time in frustration. In fact, he had quit smoking for a long time, but now he needed a cigarette to calm down. He had to think about how to face his little wife and how to calm her down. There were too many things he needed to think about. When AI Mingming walked out, she saw him smoking. Startled, she immediately snatched the cigarette from his hand and said disapprovingly, "The doctor said you can't smoke." Ronyu turned his head and laughed. His voice was very hoarse. "The doctor said that I can't have a woman yet." After he said that, AI Mingming blushed and her heart raced. She bit her lower lip and said, "You're spouting nonsense again." But he soon realized something and asked softly, "Is there something on your mind?" Ronyu held her gently in his arms and rested his chin on her hair. His voice was deep and hoarse. "The last time I went to your hometown, you must have had a hard time." AI Mingming looked at him. "Why did you suddenly think of this?" He raised the cigarette in his hand again. "You're even smoking?" Ronyu laughed. "So you're taking care of it now." She reached out and gently tugged at his collar. "Don't I have the right?" "Probably." He chuckled and kissed her. After a long time, Ronyu found that she had not fallen asleep. He patted her shoulder and asked, "What are you thinking about?" AI Mingming turned her head, bit her lip, and stared at him for a while. "I'm thinking about my childhood. It was really hard at that time, even harder than what you saw last time." Her voice was full of memories. "It was hard to even eat meat during the New Year." Ronyu suddenly felt very sad. He hugged her shoulders and said, "It won't happen again. I will take care of you." "All of them have meat to eat?" she asked hesitantly. His eyes were very clear, and there was always some indescribable meaning in them. AI Mingming did not know why, but she blushed again. She reached out and pulled up the blanket. "I'm going to sleep." The liquid chuckled and tugged at her hair. "Aren't you afraid that you can't breathe?" After a while, she came over and hugged his shoulders again. She leaned her head gently against his. "Are you still going to smoke in the future?" He lowered his head. Chapter 4635. AI Mingming's voice was very low. "I want you to be well." She looked up at him. "You're so good." Ronyu chuckled. "What's so good about me?" AI Mingming's eyes were watery as she glanced at him. After that, they stopped talking and went to sleep together. But that night was not a peaceful one for the man. After his little wife fell asleep, Ronyu gently covered her with the blanket and went to the study. He turned on the computer and typed the name AI Jia into the browser. His intuition told him that this person was inextricably linked to his wife. Especially tonight, when he saw AI Jia, he felt that she looked 60% similar to AI Mingming. Ronyu subconsciously rejected this possibility. But he was a man, and as a man, he would not run away from reality. Instead, he would do everything he could to protect his woman. Of course, When the information about AI Jia appeared on the computer, it was all official. There was nothing he wanted to know. She had grown up in a wealthy family and had a smooth sailing career. She had entered the entertainment industry and developed her career abroad. No matter how he looked at it, it did not seem to be related to AI Meng Meng. But Rong Yu's intuition told him that it was not that simple. AI Meng Meng's nervousness was obvious tonight. She had an inexplicable fear of AI Jia. Rong Yu became more and more uncertain. He reached for his phone and dialed a number. A few seconds later, the call went through. President Qin, can you help me investigate AI Jia? Qin Mo was silent for a while before he said in a low voice, why do you want to investigate? I suspect that she is related to AI Meng Meng. Rong Yu told him what had happened tonight. Qin Mo's voice was very low. I can help you. Thank you. Rong Yu then asked, how is Huan now? This time, Qin Mo was silent for a long time. After a long time, he said bitterly, she has returned to when she was 18 years old. He then hung up the phone. Rong Yu was a little shocked. 18 years old was the age when he and Huan liked each other. Huan had returned to the past. The reason why Qin Mo was willing to tell him was probably because he had other motives. After thinking about it carefully, he understood everything in his heart. Some bitterness, some faint restlessness towards that period of youth. However, he already had a wife. Huan was just a memory. He went back. He couldn't. Therefore, he interpreted Qin Mo's words as a threat or a declaration. What they wanted was for him to take a stand. Rong Yu picked up another cigarette, lit it, and smoked gently. His heart was aching. AI Meng Meng stood by the door in shock. She did not expect Rong Yu to investigate AI Jia behind her back. She thought he did not suspect anything. So, she was extremely flustered and did not know what to do. After some time, Rong Yu got up and turned around, just in time to see her standing outside the door. He stared blankly for a moment before saying immediately, why aren't you asleep? You said you don't smoke. AI Meng Meng said softly. Rong Yu smiled and said, I'm feeling a little dizzy. Come here and have a smoke. Are you just here to smoke? She asked very softly. Rong Yu smiled slightly. Of course. What else? Oh yeah, how long have you been standing here? Suddenly, AI Meng Meng felt a little tired and said very softly, can you not investigate? Chapter 46:36. It's free. Rong Yu looked at her quietly and said slowly, you heard it. Are you willing to tell me? AI Meng Meng pursed her lips and said, it's getting late. I want to sleep. AI Meng Meng pursed her lips and said, it's getting late. I want to sleep. Meng Meng. Rong Yu stopped her just as she was about to leave. AI Meng Meng's body froze. She turned her head slowly and looked at Rong Yu silently. After a long time, she said softly, Rong Yu, why won't you let me go? Why do you have to look into the past? It's not like you don't know that it's not a good past. She pressed her fingers against her heart and said softly, every time I mentioned, it hurts. Rong Yu, don't you know that I just want to live a normal life? Is that wrong? Rong Yu looked at her quietly and said after a long time, but have you ever thought that if you run away, others will let you go? I know you want to live a peaceful life, but sometimes you can't just live a peaceful life. AI Meng Meng bit her lips and shook her head desperately. After a long time, she whispered, don't force me, Rong Yu. Don't force me. She kept shaking her head and stepped back. Rong Yu got up and walked towards her. His expression was a little deep. It was an expression that AI Meng Meng had never seen before. And it was a man's unique expression. It was strong and aggressive. In the past, Rong Yu had never shown such an expression. AI Meng Meng felt that it was dangerous. She instinctively wanted to run, but Rong Yu reached out and grabbed her. He held her wrist. She had never known that he was so strong. AI Meng Meng bit her lips. Rong Yu, you're hurting me. He stared in her eyes and pulled her over forcefully. He reached out and pressed her shoulder. If you feel pain like this, it will be even more painful when you're hurt by someone else. He stared at her, and she had nowhere to run. AI Meng Meng looked into his eyes, and she had never felt so vulnerable before. She felt that she was loved by him, and she loved him too. Everyone's injuries added up couldn't compare to his casual words. It was probably because he cared too much. AI Ming Ming stared at him, but she swung her hand forcefully, trying to shake him off. However, how could she get rid of Rong Yu so easily? His fingers were still holding onto her arm, and his expression was a little ugly. AI Ming Ming bit her lips. Rong Yu, didn't you say you wanted to buy a piece of land? His expression became even more unsightly. Do you want to be a coward? AI Ming Ming bit her lips, and her eyes were a little watery. Rong Yu, are you reluctant to part with this prosperity? Rong Yu looked at her quietly and smiled faintly. It's not that I don't want to, but do you really think you'll be safe if you hide? If you think it's okay, we can leave here tonight. But what I want to tell you is that He Huan is now in the hospital. She lost her memory because she was pushed. Who do you think did it? AI Mingming's face was pale and her lips were trembling. After a long time, she spat out a few words. Is it AI Jia? He nodded. Yes, it's what you think. He paused again. So now you still want to say that you want to hide? He said softly, AI Jia is a lunatic. He Huan dare to do anything with Qin Mo's protection, let alone you and me. Ming Ming, it's useless no matter where you hide. Chapter 46-37. He continued softly, AI Jia is a lunatic. She dared to do anything even when she had Qin Mo to protect her, let alone you and me. Ming Ming, it's useless no matter where you hide. He wasn't trying to belittle himself, but he had a hunch that AI Jia had something on AI Ming Ming. There must be a complicated relationship between the two of them. If Rong Yu didn't love her that much, he wouldn't have asked. However, he was her husband. She had been hurt so badly in the past, and no one could guarantee her future. As a man, he had the responsibility to protect her. A lunatic like AI Jia wouldn't let anyone off. AI Ming Ming looked at him in a daze and muttered, Rong Yu, AI Jia is a lunatic. She could do anything. I'm scared. Rong Yu stared at her for a long time before he slowly let go of her hand and held her hand instead. AI Ming Ming's hand was cold, but Rong Yu's hand was warm. This warmth slowly warmed her up. AI Ming Ming raised her head and said in a dreamy voice, Rong Yu, you don't want to know this story. I'm far worse than you think. As she said that, she couldn't stand the past and kept shaking her head. In AI Ming Ming's heart, she could only accept her current life with Rong Yu. She had selectively filtered out the past. At this moment, just thinking about the past made her feel sorry for Rong Yu. When she was still in her hometown, she was suddenly, AI Ming Ming thought of something and her face turned pale. Rong Yu looked at her and said in a low voice, What's wrong? AI Ming Ming's fingers grabbed his hand so tightly that her nails almost dug into his flesh. AI Ming Ming's expression was distorted and she looked like she was about to break down. Rong Yu frowned and hugged her. Ming Ming. AI Ming Ming's expression was especially ugly. She stared at Rong Yu's face and said in a trembling voice, My whole life was ruined by her. How could she be so cruel? I'm her biological sister. How could she do this to me? After saying the last word, she finally couldn't hold back her tears. He murmured, How could she do this to me? Rong Yu's heart ached. He held her in his arms to comfort her. She couldn't stop trembling, and after an unknown amount of time, she slowly calmed down. Rong Yu brought her to the study, turned the heater to the maximum, and poured her a cup of hot cocoa. Then he sat opposite her. Maybe it was because of the warmth, or maybe it was because she drank half a cup of hot cocoa, but her mood slowly calmed down. Rong Yu's voice was very soft. Now, can you tell me? AI Ming Ming had calmed down a lot. She held a cup of hot cocoa in her hands. She pursed her lips and said softly, AI Jia was adopted from my family. I was still young then, probably less than 2 years old. AI Jia was about 7 or 8 years old then. I have no memory of it. I always thought that I was the only child in my family until AI Jia showed up in my hometown. Rong Yu looked at her quietly. He knew that what was going to happen next would not be very pleasant, or perhaps it would be a lifetime of pain for AI Ming Ming. That was what Rong Yu's intuition told him. The scumbag who molested her was probably sent by AI Jia. AI Mengmeng's voice was very calm, but there was a hint of trembling in it. Chapter 4638. Memorize. AI Mengmeng's voice was calm, but there was a hint of trembling in it. She said very softly, "The first time she came, I refused. I said I didn't want to leave home. I didn't want to leave my parents." Then, there was a trace of confusion in her eyes. She looked at Rongyu quietly and said softly, "Then something happened to me. That scum was arrested and sentenced to 6 years in prison. He might be out by now. After that incident, I followed AI Jia to be city. You know everything that happened after that. Everything is so coincidental. You suspect." Rongyu's voice was slightly low. "You suspect that AI Jia sent someone to do this, so that you won't be able to stay here anymore, right?" AI Mingming bit her lip and nodded lightly. Rongyu got up from the sofa, leaned over, and squatted in front of her. He placed his hand on the back of her hand and gently embraced it. His voice was even hoarser. "It's all in the past. Mingming, it's all in the past." AI Mingming was still looking at him. She bit her lip and said, "If AI Jia did it, I can't forgive myself. I helped her do so many bad things, but in the end, she hurt me. Also, the thing that I was found out about was also her doing." At this point, AI Mingming's expression became a little dazed. "Rongyu, I will never forget that day. I will never forget the feeling of being pressed down by someone and watching the needle pierce into my skin." Her body trembled slightly as she looked into Rongyu's eyes. "That was the darkest moment of my life. I was extremely afraid. When I woke up, everything was gone. I've worked so hard for so long, but I can't even compare to AI Jia's injection. I don't know why she treats me like this. Even if I'm not obedient, she's my sister. Why would she treat me like this?" AI Mingming slightly closed her eyes, and there was a touch of tears at the corner of her eyes. "I have always felt that she is a good person, so I am willing to do many things for her. I don't understand how she can be so heartless." For a long time after that, she was afraid even when she slept. She often woke up in the middle of the night. She always felt that there was someone in her room who would press her down at any time and hit her with those harmful things again. She was terrified. Later, she did not dare to turn off the light again, because she could not sleep if she did. She was afraid that those harmful things would come out again. It was only when Rongyu appeared that she was no longer afraid. And now, when she recalled those past events, her whole body still trembled. He couldn't stop his fear. Her hand was held by Rongyu. Rongyu's voice was very low. "You have me now. She can't hurt you anymore." AI Mingming's eyes were a little listless. After a long time, she softly asked, "Rongyu, can we change places to live?" Without waiting for him to answer, she reached out and gently hugged herself. "I'm scared. I'm really scared. I'm scared that I'll be squeezed in her hands like a little bug. I'll die easily." In the past, it didn't matter if she died or not, but now she had Rongyu. They had a present and a future. Perhaps one day, they could even have a child. So AI Mingming couldn't bear to die. She wanted to leave this place with him and stay away from AI Jia. When she finished speaking, Rongyu looked at her quietly. AI Mingming bit her lips and said softly, "You don't agree? Don't you want to live somewhere else with me?" Chapter 4639. Memorize. Rongyu sighed. "It's not that I don't agree, but Mingming, are you really going to let her go even if you run away like this?" AI Mingming bit her lips so hard that she almost bled. After a long time, she finally said in a low voice, "I don't want to have anything to do with her anymore. Rongyu, I don't want to remember the past. Just pretend that she never existed." Rongyu sighed again. "You." He reached out and ruffled her hair. "If this is what you want, we can live in another place. There's no need to move to the deep mountains and forests. That's not realistic, is it?" AI Mingming looked straight at him. He couldn't believe that Rongyu would agree to it. She thought, he will not. She thought, he will try to persuade himself to face. But he didn't. He said he was willing to leave. She looked at Rongyu and didn't know what to say. Rongyu just smiled warmly and said, "Well, it's a deal." He picked up his phone and looked at the time. "It's getting late. Time to sleep." AI Mingming responded with an "oh," and had completely calmed down. Indeed, as she had said, as long as AI Jia was not in front of her, as long as she did not think about those things, she would forget about them. All she wanted was an ordinary happiness. AI Ming Ming bit her lip and looked at him. Rongyu took her hand and got up. All right, let's go to sleep. Only then did she follow him into the bedroom. AI Ming Ming calmed down, but because of Rongyu's worry, she had a high fever in the second half of the night. At about 8 in the morning, AI Ming Ming felt that the person beside her was very hot. She was shocked and immediately sat up. She reached out her hand and felt Rongyu's forehead burning. His face was abnormally flushed. He has a high fever. AI Ming Ming shook him. Rongyu. Rongyu struggled to open his eyes, his voice hoarse. What's wrong? AI Ming Ming looked like she was about to cry. You have a fever. It's very hot. I'll go get the thermometer. She had been taking care of him for a long time. She was panicking, but she knew what to do now. Crying was the most useless thing, but she chose to do things while crying. Soon, she brought the thermometer over and swiftly placed it under Rongyu's armpit. After everything was done, she looked up at him and asked, How are you feeling? Rongyu was a little weak, and he felt very uncomfortable and dizzy. However, he still gave her a reassuring smile. It's all right. I'm not that delicate. AI Ming Ming didn't say anything. She just stared at the thermometer, as if that little thing could decide her fate. Rongyu also looked at her and only smiled. About 2 minutes later, she carefully pulled it out. When it touched his skin, she felt an unnatural heat. AI Ming Ming's nose turned sour. She suddenly regretted it. She shouldn't have been standing at the door last night. If she hadn't gone out to order skewers, she wouldn't have met AI Jia, and Rongyu wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state. AI Ming Ming's heart was filled with unspeakable regret. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked down at the thermometer. 40 degrees. Her heart sank. To Rongyu, this temperature was fatal. She had to go to the hospital immediately. Rongyu, can you walk? If you can, I'll drive to the hospital now. She held him and asked softly. Rongyu closed his eyes slightly and nodded gently. I should be able to rest for a while. Chapter 4640. Rongyu closed his eyes slightly and nodded gently. I should be fine after resting for a while. Probably because he was very weak, he didn't open his eyes. He just moved his hand and finally found her hand. He held it gently and said in a hoarse and gentle voice, Are you crying, silly? AI Ming Ming sniffled. I'm not crying. I'll get some clothes. Rongyu, don't sleep. Wait for me. He nodded and squeezed her hand. However, when AI Ming Ming brought the clothes back, she saw Rongyu's head tilted to the side and his face seemed to be even redder. No matter how she called him, he couldn't wake up. He fell into a coma. In the chaos, AI Ming Ming didn't know if she cried or who she called. She didn't even know how long it took for her to go to the hospital. When Qin Shun came out of the examination room, he told her that Rongyu had acute pneumonia because of the cold and fatigue. AI Ming Ming bit her lip and couldn't speak for a long time. His life is not in danger, but he will not be able to handle the torment. It's best if he does not work and focuses on resting. Qin Shun scrolled through the list and then raised his eyes. Is he still writing the script? AI Ming Ming shook her head. I don't think so. Qin Shun's eyes deepened. You don't know? Rongyu can't be tired. AI Ming Ming looked down. I'll tell him. Qin Shun smiled faintly and then finished writing the list. He asked the nurse to get the medicine and drip. Then he continued to talk to AI Ming Ming. He has to stay for a week this time. It's a bit serious. She paused. Rongyu's health is very poor. It's best not to travel and stay in B City. AI Ming Ming's heart skipped a beat. Then she asked Qin Shun, he can't travel? Qin Shun smiled. Of course. No one can take responsibility if there's a problem with his body. Besides, his illness can only be controlled in Shenyuan. Staying in B City is the best choice. Well, I usually don't go abroad. Since many years ago, she hadn't gone abroad. Everyone had a little secret in their heart, and Qin Shun was no exception. As for this, Wan Yu did not know either. Husband and wife, it's good to have some secrets. After Qin Shun finished speaking, AI Ming Ming said in a daze, We were just talking about settling down in H City last night. Qinshan glanced at her and smiled. But there are no doctors suitable for Rongyu in City H. His gaze was fixed on AI Mengmeng. Then he sighed. I don't mean anything else, but Rongyu and He Huan had an affair before. Qin and Mo will definitely take care of him. Do as you see fit. AI Mengmeng was stunned again. Then she returned to the ward. Rongyu was momentarily conscious. When he saw her enter, he smiled weakly. However, he didn't say anything. AI Mengmeng knew that he was suffering. His illness had been tormenting him. Perhaps he often felt uncomfortable, but he had to bear it alone. Only she felt very happy. Because everything she enjoyed was exchanged with Rongyu's health. Qinshan asked her if Rongyu had written a script. She didn't know, but now that she thought about it, he must have written it so that she could live a better life. Suddenly, she felt that she was very selfish. He was selfish to the extreme. AI Mengmeng sat beside him and held his hand. His hand was very hot. Rongyu looked at her quietly. AI Mengmeng's voice was very low. Rongyu, we won't move. We'll stay in B City. He still looked at her gently. After a long time, he smiled weakly. Why did you change your mind? Chapter 46-41. Updated quickly. He was still looking at her gently. After a long while, he smiled weakly. Why did you change your mind? AI Mengmeng looked at him too. Suddenly, she shook her head forcefully. She couldn't stand herself. He was so nice to her, always thinking about her, but she was still living in the past. Her voice was very soft. No, I just can't bear to leave here. Rongyu's gaze was gentle, but it seemed to be able to see through her. He remained silent for a long time before holding her hand. We'll talk about it when we get home. AI Mengmeng shook her head vigorously. Rongyu, I'm not leaving. I'll stay here and not go anywhere. Listen to me this time. He laughed, then closed his eyes again. At this moment, the nurses came over and saw Rongyu closing his eyes while AI Mengmeng was crying. They were veterans in the hospital, and the nurses had seen them make a fool of themselves before. This time, they wouldn't let go of the opportunity to tease them. Why are you crying again? The tap water is free too. Rongyu was very famous. He was talented and handsome. AI Mengmeng's recent movie was also very popular. In the past, many people did not like her, but after this movie, AI Mengmeng had completely changed. Now that she was watching over Rongyu, crying so miserably, the nurses felt that this girl was really cute and adorable. AI Mengmeng felt very embarrassed after the nurses teased her. Her eyes were red, and she didn't dare to cry anymore. She got up and asked the nurse to start 4 drip. When she got up, Rongyu pulled her hand but didn't say anything. After the 4 drip, Rongyu's fever finally subsided. However, he looked very tired and kept sleeping. And AI Mengmeng kept staring at his eyes, afraid that he would disappear. Just like that, he would never wake up. Time passed bit by bit, like a torturous torture. She didn't eat or sleep, just watching over him. She would immediately look at him if there was any movement, afraid that she would miss it. She stayed by his side until the evening before Rongyu woke up. When he woke up, he saw AI Mengmeng sitting there, her eyes red. His Adam's apple moved, and his voice was especially hoarse. Have you eaten? At first, she was stunned, but then she shook her head. I'm not hungry. What time is it? Rongyu turned his head. AI Mengmeng bit her lower lip. It's 5 in the afternoon. Rongyu looked out of the window, quietly, as if he was lost in thought. After a while, he whispered, It's getting dark. I've slept for the whole day. What happened today? As he spoke, he turned his head back and gazed at her quietly. AI Mengmeng shook her head. Rongyu smiled again. It's so late, and you're not hungry? How can there be such a stupid person? I'm not stupid, she said stupidly. Rongyu was probably too tired. He closed his eyes and said, I'm hungry. Go get 2 servings of rice, and we'll eat together. Hearing that he wanted to eat, AI Mengmeng immediately ordered a meal. After ordering dinner, Rongyu fell asleep again. She waited patiently, then wrung out a towel and rubbed him down. Dinner was served, but Rongyu still did not wake up. Even Qinshan was alarmed. He came over to check and said meaningfully, He's probably too tired. For some reason, AI Ming Ming felt a little guilty. Qinshan did not say anything more. After all, this was a matter between husband and wife. Getting sick was not like becoming a monk. Chapter 46-42. It's free. Qinshan straightened up and said with a smile, "Be more restrained in the future." AI Mingming's face immediately heated up, but no matter how embarrassed she was, Rongyu's health was still her top priority. AI Mingming's face immediately became hot, but no matter how embarrassed she was, Rongyu's health was still the top priority. Qinshan regained his relaxed posture. Didn't I say that he's just too tired? Qinshan regained his relaxed posture. Didn't I say it? He's just too tired. AI Mingming was no longer nervous, but her face was even redder. Qinshan went out first, mainly because AI Mingming looked too nervous. After Qinshan left, AI Mingming looked at Rongyu, who was lying on the bed. After Qinshan left, AI Mingming quietly looked at Rongyu, who was lying on the bed. Rongyu's face was abnormally red. AI Mingming was a little worried, so she reached out to touch him again. It was still very hot. She thought about it, and finally wrung a towel to wipe his body to lower his temperature. The two breakfasts were left there until they turned cold. AI Mingming waited until late at night before Rongyu woke up. This time, he really woke up. He opened his eyes and saw AI Mingming sitting in front of him. Her eyes were already red. Rongyu said softly, "Did you not eat at all?" AI Mingming stared at him for a long time before saying, "I wanted to wait for you to eat together." Rongyu's lips moved slightly, and he smiled faintly. "How can you be so silly? What if I don't wake up for 3 days and you don't eat for 3 days? AI Mingming still looked at him, and after a long time, she bit her lip and said, "Then I won't eat for 3 days." Rongyu's smile deepened, but there was a hint of heartache in his smile. He said in a low voice, "How can there be such a silly girl like you?" AI Mingming bit her lower lip. "Do you not like silly girls?" Rongyu leaned his head against the pillow and looked at her quietly. There was a faint smile on his young face. "Maybe I just like silly girls." AI Mingming continued to stare at him, unable to say anything for a long time. Rongyu propped himself up with his hand and slowly sat up. He wiped his face and then said in a relaxed manner, "I'm a bit hungry. Bring the food over." AI Mingming nodded and went to get it. But after a while, she bit her lip and said, "It seems to be cold." Rongyu smiled and went to warm it up. AI Mingming nodded and immediately took it over to warm it up. When she returned, Rongyu was already up. He was sitting on the sofa with a small table in front of him. AI Mingming walked over and prepared the food. She handed it to Rongyu and asked, "Are you feeling better now?" "It's nothing." Rongyu smiled faintly and continued eating. The two of them had a quiet meal together, and Rongyu's spirit was much better. However, his physical strength was still not very good. He only accompanied her for a while before falling asleep again. AI Mingming kept watch until midnight. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and took a nap with him. When she woke up, it was already dawn. Rongyu was not on the bed. AI Mingming was shocked and immediately looked around. Then she saw Rongyu sitting on the sofa in front of the window. He was holding a laptop in his hands, and his long and beautiful fingers were typing on it. Her nose instantly turned sour, because she remembered what Qinshan had said. Rongyu had actually been writing a script all this time to give her a better life. Chapter 46-43. At that moment, AI Mingming felt that she was extremely selfish. It was as if she had sucked away all of Rongyu's energy like a vampire. And the only thing she could do for him was to stay by his side when he was tired and sick and accompany him for a meal. That was all. AI Mingming's heart was extremely sad. She walked over softly, standing behind Rongyu. Rongyu was probably too focused as he was still typing on the keyboard of his laptop. AI Mingming's pain instantly reached its peak. She leaned over gently and pressed her face against his back. She hugged his waist and said in a very, very soft voice, "Rongyu, I'm sorry." When she said those words, she was especially sad, so her voice was a little hoarse and even a little choked up. Ronyu's body froze for a moment. Then he turned his head, but he couldn't see her. His voice was also especially gentle, very, very soft. What's wrong? AI Mingming shook her head with all her might. Nothing. She was behind him, feeling extremely tormented. She wanted to endure it, but she couldn't. She laid her whole body on his back and cried. Ronyu froze for a moment. Then he put down the work in his hands and reached behind him. Finally, he caught her hand and gently pulled her to sit next to him. AI Mingming was still blinking and looked at Ronyu innocently. Ronyu also looked at her and smiled slightly. You must be thinking that I'm working so hard for you, right? AI Mingming didn't say anything, but that was probably what she was thinking. Ronyu smiled lightly and reached out to touch her face. I like to write. Of course, this can be exchanged for a generous reward and let us live a better life. AI Mingming bit her lip. I can save a little. I can also not order takeout. I can cook for myself. I can even go to work. I could do any kind of work. As she said that, she leaned her head on his shoulder and murmured softly, Ronyu, I don't want you to work so hard. She was afraid that his body couldn't take it. She was afraid that he wouldn't be able to grow old with her. If life was consumed by a single person, then what was the point? AI Mingming leaned against him. Ronyu seemed to understand something and looked at her. After a long time, he sighed, How can I bear to do that? He patted her shoulder and said, Go and prepare breakfast for me. All right for a while. AI Mingming glared at him. A moment later, she suddenly put away the notebook in front of him and said, You're not allowed to write anymore. If you write anymore, I won't like you anymore. Ronyu looked at her curiously. AI Mingming's expression became even fiercer. She hugged his notebook. In the future, if you want to write about this, you have to get my permission. Ronyu couldn't help but laugh. There was a hint of smile in his eyes as he said, You're so overbearing, so be it. AI Mingming snorted softly. The smile in Ronyu's eyes deepened, as if he didn't care. Then, he swept her into his arms along with her belongings. Then he sighed, Mingming, I'll be good and accompany you until you grow old. She leaned on his shoulder, and the notebook was right against her chest. It hurt a little, but her heart hurt even more. Ronyu said that to comfort her. Chapter 46-44. After hugging for a long time, AI Mingming finally broke free from his embrace and said softly, I'm going to buy breakfast. She had only taken a step when Ronyu held onto her hand. He looked up and smiled. Let's hire a nanny later. AI Mingming was stunned for a moment before she quickly said, Ronyu, I can cook. Her expression turned ugly as she bit her lip. Although it doesn't taste good, I will really work hard. Trust me. Ronyu was still smiling. You can learn from me. If you do well in the future, we won't need a nanny anymore. AI Mingming didn't know why he was saying this. She wanted to ask but decided against it. She just felt that he really liked her at this moment. Otherwise, with his status, he wouldn't need to look for her at all. After all, she had so many things to do and her past was so unbearable. She looked at his handsome face and suddenly felt an indescribable feeling. She couldn't explain it clearly. It was best. She didn't say anything and just leaned forward to kiss his forehead. She cherished this kiss very much. To AI Mingming, Ronyu was the most precious gift she had received in her life. He was the thing that she cherished the most. After she kissed him, she straightened her body and her face was a little hot. She was a young girl and she used to be quite bold. However, after she got together with him, she was usually passive. It was probably because she felt inferior and lacked confidence because she wasn't good enough. But now she felt that she might have been wrong. She felt that Ronyu was a good person, and he probably felt that she was a good person and liked her too. Otherwise, why would he choose her? I'm going, she said softly. Ronyu smiled and nodded. Be careful. At this moment, the nurse came over to help him with the drip. She didn't have anything to worry about, so she took her purse and walked out. The morning sun was golden and warm. AI Mingming looked up and breathed in the fresh air. She thought that after Ronyu recovered, she could spend a holiday with him nearby and bask in the sun together. It would be very comfortable and it would be good for his body. Perhaps it was because the sun was too comfortable. AI Mingming felt a faint warmth. But as soon as he opened his eyes, all the blood in his body froze. Every pore on his body opened up in a guarded manner. The person she met was none other than AI Jia. AI Jia had a cold expression on his face. AI Jia's expression made AI Meng Meng shudder. Just like that, they faced each other for a long time. AI Meng Meng calmly asked, "What are you doing here?" AI Jia looked at her for a while and said coldly, "I'll wait for you in the cafe in front." With that, he turned around and left. AI Meng Meng stood where she was for a long time. She could choose not to go, but she knew that AI Jia would do something crazy if she didn't go. Rongyu's body couldn't go anywhere. Even if she wanted to hide from AI Jia, she couldn't. She hesitated for a long time before walking towards AI Jia. AI Jia had already picked a place to sit by the window. She was originally extremely beautiful, and she was still beautiful at this moment. It was just that she was not as exquisite as before. Instead, she looked a bit more lonely and cold. AI Jia held a cigarette in his hand. As he smoked slowly, he looked at AI Meng Meng, who had just entered. There was a hint of evil in his eyes. Chapter 46-45. AI Meng Meng sat down opposite her and said in a low voice, "What's the matter?" AI Jia was still smoking a thin cigarette, not caring about the stares. She stared at AI Meng Meng and the wallet in her hand and smiled coldly. Then, she said casually, "There's something." There was no expression on AI Meng Meng's face. She just stared at AI Jia for a long time. AI Jia let her stare patiently and didn't look impatient at all. After a long time, AI Meng Meng said in a choked voice, "Haven't I been hurt enough by you? Why do you still want to see me? I'm in a bit of trouble." AI Jia put out the cigarette and said directly, "I need 50 million. Think of a way." AI Meng Meng's face turned pale. She stared at AI Jia and said angrily, "Why should I give you money?" And it was 50 million. Because of this, AI Jia smiled faintly and pushed an envelope to AI Meng Meng. AI Meng Meng looked at the envelope and her face darkened. She didn't have to think to know what it was. Lu Chang got out of prison last month. Think about it. If he released some money, he could go to prison for a few years. He would be very willing to give me a few 100,000. But you've worked so hard to marry a man. Think about it. Do you think Rongyu will still want you if the truth is exposed? He's a celebrity now, and there are a lot of women who want to marry him. You're not that important. At most, you'll be a nurse or nanny who looks good. Don't associate yourself with true love. You don't deserve it. AI Meng Meng's gaze was fixed on the envelope, as if she was looking at a poisonous snake. She knew deep down that the real poisonous snake was actually AI Jia. She bit her lip and said after a long time, "I don't have 50 million. Rongyu does." AI Jia chuckled. "You probably don't know, but Rongyu's scripts cost 20 million per episode. He signed a contract with King Entertainment for 10 episodes. I've already taken half of the deposit." Qin Mo was really generous to Rongyu. Rongyu's wife's ex-boyfriend had suddenly disappeared, and he actually spent 100 million to sign him. This was probably the worst deal Qin Mo had ever made. However, Rongyu was worth the price. There were many good actors, but there were very few good screenwriters. AI Jia admitted that she was making things difficult for AI Meng Meng. She just wanted to see AI Meng Meng struggling. AI Meng Meng bit her lip and said in a low voice after a long time, "Too much. 30 million, no less." AI Jia stood up. "Otherwise, you know the consequences. Transfer the money to this bank card. I know you can make the decision for the 30 million. With that, she left. AI Meng Meng was left sitting there alone in a daze. She knew that she had given him this time, and there would be a future. However, if she did not give it to him, what would AI Jia do to her, or even Rongyu? Rongyu had left some money with her, but this money was exchanged with Rongyu's health, and she had given it to her enemy. AI Meng Meng couldn't do it. However, if she did not give it to him, the consequences would be tragic. AI Meng Meng sat there and looked at the envelope quietly. After a long time, she finally took it. She opened it, and there was a bank card inside. There was not much expression on her face. She just slowly put the card in her bag. About an hour later, she returned to the ward with breakfast. Chapter 46:46. Memorize. Ronyu looked at her quietly and smiled. Why are you so late? Where did he go? AI Ming Ming raised the breakfast in her hand. Your favorite. I queued a little longer. There are so many people today, she said a lot, but she didn't even know what she said. Ronyu looked at her quietly. Ming Ming, I'm hungry. She hurriedly made breakfast for him, trying to pretend that nothing had happened. Ronyu didn't say anything. After eating, he lay down. Beside his pillow was his phone. He had just received a message from his accountant. He said that his wife had transferred 30 million to AI Jia. He remembered that he had given her 50 million, and she had given AI Jia 30 million. How could she be so stupid? Did she think that she could live a peaceful life by giving AI Jia money? If a lunatic like AI Jia was not locked up, she would be a scourge. She would never be at peace. However, Ronyu did not say anything. He acted as if nothing had happened, because he was afraid of scaring her, afraid that she would overthink. However, Ronyu met Qin Mo in the afternoon when AI Ming Ming wasn't around. After the discussion, Qin Mo's eyes were a little quiet. Let's go and see He Huan. As he spoke, he laughed self-deprecatingly. The 18-year-old He Huan. Right now, He Huan had a bad temper. She was like a little girl who needed to be coaxed at all times. Qin Mo could be coaxed, but he was really afraid that even if he coaxed her, she would still leave and go abroad in the end. He was afraid that they would part again. He knew that He Huan would not give up. She wanted to see Ronyu. However, Ronyu had rejected his offer. He said very indifferently, "It's better if I don't." Qin Mo gazed at him quietly. After a long time, he smiled faintly and said, "Very well." He didn't force it. This kind of thing couldn't be forced anyway. After Ronyu left, Qin Mo also returned to the ward. He Huan would be discharged the next day. She had lost her memory, and it wasn't something that could be cured just by staying in the hospital. Qin Mo chose to accompany her. Or, as Qin Shin said, he wanted her to fall in love with him again. But how could it be so easy? Qin Mo pushed open the door and saw He Huan playing with her phone on the bed. Her brain was slightly injured, but her body was fine. Playing with her phone was not a problem. They went on like this for a few days, and she paid him little attention. Not to mention anything else. These few days, Qin Mo was also angry, but there was no place for him to vent his anger. The 18-year-old He Huan was so arrogant. Therefore, he still had to coax her. Actually, He Huan knew that Qin Mo had come in. Although she didn't like him now, they were very close. Therefore, when he came in, she didn't move at all and continued to play with her phone. When she woke up, she had a lot of games to play to pass the time. When Qin Mo saw that she was playing with her phone, he was a little angry. He went over and snatched away the thing in her hand. He quickly finished the game for her and was about to put it away when the 18-year-old girl leaned over and said in a soft voice, "Qin Mo, how did you do it? I played more than 10 times and still couldn't win. Teach me." Qin Mo looked at her and smiled. "Because you have a pig brain." He Huan felt that she had been implicated and glared at him for a long time. She didn't know why, but she was 33 years old. Perhaps it was because she was young, and now that she had the memory of 18 years old, Qin Mo felt that she had really gone back. Chapter 46:47. Updated quickly. He felt that He Huan had become the little girl from back then. That was when he liked her the most, and she had liked someone else back then. But now that she was talking to him in such a soft voice, his heart couldn't help but soften. He couldn't describe the feeling. Actually, the game she was playing was from 2 to 3 years ago. Moreover, it was developed by a subsidiary of King Entertainment. He Huan wasn't good at it in the past, and now she was even worse. Qin Mo raised his phone and smiled. "You want to play? Help me clear a few levels." She bit her pretty lips and tugged at his sleeve with her little hand. Qin Mo lowered his head to take a look, a hint of a smile in his eyes. He Huan wanted to shrink back, but he wouldn't let her. He grabbed her hand and brought her to the sofa. Sitting down, he placed her in front of him and sat in his arms. He was really good at games. His long fingers moved nonstop. He Huan's gaze landed on the screen, and then she sneaked a glance at his fingers. They were really good, and she had been sitting up straight, but after a while, her neck started to ache. It was indescribably sad. Qin Mo's hand moved a little, and she fell into his embrace, naturally snuggling into his embrace. His figure was good, and she could feel his muscles even when she was leaning against him. And he smelled really, really good. Huan was a little flustered. This was the Qin Mo she wasn't too familiar with. The last Qin Mo she knew was 25. He was young, good-looking, handsome, and a little domineering. And a 40-year-old man was at the most attractive age in a man's life. An 18-year-old girl like Huan couldn't take it, and so she couldn't sit still in his arms. Qin Mo quickly realized that something was wrong with her. He lowered his head and looked at Huan, his voice low and deep. "What are you thinking about?" Huan was stunned for a moment. Then she bit her lip. "It's a little hot." Qin Mo chuckled. "It's 22 degrees. You think it's hot?" Huan's face was a little hot, and she stayed in his arms for a while longer. Qin Mo played a few levels and stuffed the phone into her hands. "You do it." Huan was stunned. She wanted to let him do it, but then she felt like she wouldn't leave his arms, so she took the phone and pretended to play. However, all her attention was on Qin Mo, who was behind her, and so she died countless times in less than 5 minutes. Huan was embarrassed, and she wanted to smash the phone. "I don't want to play anymore." It was rare that she was willing to stay in his arms. How could Qin Mo let go of such an opportunity? He took the phone and pulled her into his embrace with one hand. He slowed down the speed of the call as a form of teaching her. This time, Huan watched obediently and attentively. On the other hand, the one who taught by example was not very attentive. So, in the end, Qin Mo was over. To Boss Qin, this was very humiliating. During the beta, he had cleared the game in one go. Now, he was only at level 10, and he actually died. Qin Mo's expression didn't look good. He stared at the phone for a long time. Huan stared blankly for a long time. After a while, she said softly, "Qin Mo, the game is over." "I know." His voice was a little stiff. Then, he took the phone again. This time, he didn't look at her or teach her. Instead, he started playing and accidentally broke a record. Chapter 46-48. I know. His voice was a little stiff as he picked up his phone again. This time, he didn't look at her or teach her. Instead, he started playing and accidentally broke a record. After breaking the record, Qin Mo placed the phone in Huan's hand and looked at her. Huan exclaimed, "Wow, that's amazing." Qin Mo looked reserved as he took out his phone and said calmly, "Let's form a team in the future." Huan looked at him eagerly. Qin Mo had already quickly opened the game and added her. Huan nodded and stared blankly at the new friend list on her phone. Qin Mo was indeed a straight man. His in-game ID was Qin Mo himself, and he was the top player in the entire server. Huan stared at it for a long time before she asked softly, "Qin Mo, did you use money to get there?" Qin Mo's face darkened. He glared at her and gritted his teeth, saying word by word, "I need to use money to get there. I've been number 1 in the entire server since a few years ago. Okay?" To this day, no one could challenge his position. Now that she said that he used money to get there, he wanted to see if he could. Therefore, Huan became number 2 in the entire server in the afternoon. Therefore, Xiaowan could only play with Qin Mo from now on. Her skills were really too bad. And now, Huan played a few more rounds of the game. She was so focused that she didn't realize that she was actually in his arms. Qin Mo would tug at her hair from time to time, and it felt good. He was already 40 years old, and his wife was back to 18 years old. This was a happy thing, no matter where it was. After a while, Huan passed a level and turned around happily. "Qin Mo, I passed." But as soon as she turned around, her face accidentally brushed against his lips. Immediately, the atmosphere became a little awkward. Huan stammered, "I didn't do it on purpose." Qin Mo just looked at her. He resisted the urge to touch his own face, and then his voice was especially low and hoarse. "So you're going to apologize?" Huan was still staring at him. Qin Mo chuckled again. His slender fingers gently touched her face. After a while, he finally lowered his head and gently kissed her lips. "This is my apology gift." Because he didn't want to scare her, the kiss ended as soon as it touched. Hee-hwan only felt a warmth on her lips before he left. She stared at him stupidly. Chin-mo chuckled. What's the matter? Hee-hwan was still in a daze. After a long time, she whispered, You kissed me? Chin-mo grunted. Yeah, I kissed you. He didn't say much, just stared at her. Hee-hwan bit her lower lip and carefully moved her body away, wanted to keep some distance from him. But Chin-mo quickly grabbed her arm and pulled her closer. His voice was even lower and hoarse. We're husband and wife. Isn't it normal for us to kiss? Even if... He didn't finish his sentence and just looked at her. Hee-hwan's heart was beating very fast. She understood what he meant. She covered her face and didn't speak for a long time. It was a little unbelievable. She and Chin-mo. In her memory, it was impossible. She couldn't remember when she didn't like him. She liked Rongyu. Thinking of Rongyu, Hee-hwan's heartbeat slowed down when she saw Chin-mo. She looked at Chin-mo and said very slowly, I'm not ready to be your wife. Let's go home and get a room, okay? Chapter 46-49. She looked at Chin-mo and said slowly, I'm not ready to be your wife. Let's go home and get a room, okay? Chin-mo looked at her quietly and asked very slowly, I want to know if you're going to inform me or discuss it. Hee-hwan bit her lip. Is there a difference? Chin-mo said directly, Of course it's different. If it's discuss, I can think about it. But if it's to inform me, then don't even think about it, Hee-hwan. Hee-hwan was still in a daze. After a long while, she said, I choose discuss it. Chin-mo stared at her little face for a long time before he smiled faintly. Are you sure? Hee-hwan nodded. Yes, I'm sure. Then, Chin-mo said slowly, If it's discuss, I won't agree. She glared at him. His expression was slightly domineering. We're husband and wife, aren't we? Hee-hwan still wanted to struggle, but Chin-mo didn't give her a chance at all. If you continue to object, I don't mind proposing some other duties as husband and wife. And this is something you can't escape from, Hee-hwan. She was in a daze. You can't. Why can't I? Chin-mo's voice was a little cold. You know I can. He narrowed his eyes. Hee-hwan, don't make me angry. Otherwise, I won't be that patient. He paused. After all, you're only 18 years old now, aren't you? He pinched her chin gently with his fingers. There are some things that you don't want to happen soon, right? Hee-hwan was not stupid. She completely understood what he was saying and what he meant. She was 33 years old now. She was no longer an 18-year-old girl. She was his legal wife. An 18-year-old girl, Hee-hwan, might be able to throw a tantrum with Chin-mo, but she didn't dare to now. No matter how willful she was, she had to take care of Hee-hwan, who Chin-mo hadn't let her see. She heard that he would bring her to live in an apartment, and Shun-ting would take care of Hee-hwan. Hee-hwan bit her lip and didn't say anything else. Chin-mo had always known her temper, so he said in a low voice, What's wrong? Are you angry again? Hee-hwan was indeed angry. He said angrily, How would I dare? Chin-mo laughed. Why wouldn't you dare? He reached out and ruffled her hair. All right, you've been playing for a long time. You should take a break. His attitude towards her was like that of a pet. Hee-hwan bit her lip and didn't speak for a long time. What's wrong? Is there anything else you want to say? His easygoing manner was probably the reason why she didn't dare to voice her opinion about sleeping together again. Hee-hwan bit her lip. I want to see Hee-hwan. Chin-mo's body sat on the sofa. After a long time, he smiled. Maybe after a while. You've forgotten her. You might not be used to each other. Hee-hwan still wanted to say something, but Chin-mo stopped her. Take a nap. She could only lie down angrily. Chin-mo stayed with her for a while. After she fell asleep, he went to the company. Although Hee-hwan had lost her memory, she didn't become a little idiot. So he left her in the hospital and only asked someone to watch over her. When Hee-hwan woke up, Chin-mo wasn't there. She sat up and looked around. She knew that someone was guarding outside the door, but she didn't want to go out. But now she was a little hungry. She wanted to go to Chin-chen's office to find something to eat. Chapter 46-50. When Hee-hwan woke up, Chin-mo wasn't around. She sat up and looked around. She knew that someone was guarding the door, but she didn't want to go out. However, she was a little hungry now. She wanted to go to Chin-chen's office to find something to eat. As soon as she appeared, two people immediately followed her, while the other two guarded the door. Huan didn't care about the people following her. She just calmly walked towards the elevator, wanting to go downstairs to find Qin. However, before she reached the elevator, Huan stopped in her tracks, because she met Rongyu. Rongyu was different from the one she remembered. He was still very young, but more mature. In a VIP ward, Rongyu sat on the sofa with a notebook in his hand. He was writing something with his head down. Huan could see the side of his face from where she was standing. He looked very good. It was how Huan remembered him. Huan stood at the door and watched quietly. Rongyu didn't notice her presence. She kept standing there until a girl she didn't know came over with a cup of tea and handed it to Rongyu. Rongyu looked up and said something to her. He even kissed her on the lips. Huan looked at him in a daze. Then, she unconsciously touched her lips. The way Rongyu kissed others was the same way Qin kissed her. Qin said that Rongyu was married and had a wife. Her name was Ai Mengmeng. Huan looked at him quietly. It was as if the blood in her body had frozen. Actually, she should have left. After all, it was 2019. So many years had passed. Rongyu already had a wife. There was really no need to meet again. Moreover, it was also embarrassing for Huan, because everyone had their own lives, but Huan still liked Rongyu. However, she was Qin wife. Rongyu also had a wife. Huan took a step back and wanted to leave. But at that moment, Rongyu looked up and saw her. When their eyes met, Huan took a step back. However, she was stopped by Rongyu. Huan, he called her name. Come in and have a seat. Huan didn't have much expression on her face, but she still nodded and walked in slowly. In fact, Rongyu couldn't be calm in front of Huan, who had memories from when she was 18 years old. However, adults needed to control themselves. He had a wife and he loved her. So, no matter how moved he was, he could only control himself. Huan walked in and stopped the bodyguards. Wait outside. Go, Huan said. Go then, he said to Ai Mengmeng softly. Go get a cup of tea. Then he said to Rong, he said to Ai. Girl, he said. As a woman, she could see the longing in Huan's eyes. Ai up, he woman in he heart day. You because of Huan's background, because of Huan's talent, because Huan and Rongyu used to like each other, because Huan married Qin for Rongyu. They had Qin day. Go, they had 18. Ai's words hurt her deeply. Ai Mengmeng was not convinced when Ai Jia told her that she was just a younger and prettier nanny and caregiver. She felt that she wasn't, but when Huan appeared in front of her, she felt that she was. Chapter 46:51. Ai Mengmeng wasn't convinced when Ai Jia said that she was just a younger and prettier nanny and nurse. She didn't think that she was one, but when Huan appeared in front of her, she felt that she was. Huan was 33 years old, a little older than her, but Huan really looked like a young girl now. She was so pure and innocent that even Rongyu would be tempted. She could clearly see his heart in Rongyu's eyes. Ai Mengmeng felt a little inferior, so she went to pour tea. Rongyu looked at her and seemed to know what she was thinking. He grabbed her and said, Wait a minute. Ai Mengmeng was a little nervous. What's wrong? Nothing. Rongyu patted her hand. Go and pour some tea. Ai Mengmeng felt that he was a little strange and nervous. She knew that he wouldn't abandon her, but she was always alone and she was afraid that he would love someone else. Then, being with him would be unbearable. Ai Mengmeng used to be very materialistic. She always dreamed of marrying a rich man. It didn't matter whether the man loved her or not. The point was that he was rich. However, after marrying Rongyu, she realized that what she wanted wasn't money, but people. It was Rongyu and his love. She felt that she was greedy, but she was his wife and she had the right to ask for it. However, after this morning, Ai Mengmeng knew that she didn't have the right anymore. She used Rongyu's 30 million to buy her unknown happiness. She didn't even know how long Ai Jia would let her go with the 30 million, and she didn't know what Ai Jia would think when he found out. Would he abandon her? Compared to Huan, Ai Mengmeng was selfish. So, she felt guilty at the moment, and she couldn't take Rongyu's pat. She had let him down. Actually, she should have left. It was a good thing for both of them. He could find a good nurse to take care of him, and maybe they could get married in the future without being with a vampire like her. She was too negative. At this moment, AI Meng Meng despised herself. Ronyu knew how she felt, but he had to take care of her pride, so he couldn't say too much. He only spoke to He Huan casually and politely, but there was a hint of unfamiliarity in his words. They were actually two people from the Torrent of Time. Chinamo could hide anything from her, but he couldn't. He had too many things to worry about. As for AI Meng Meng, she stood far away and listened quietly, so much so that her water was not delivered. Ronyu's voice sounded softly. Meng Meng. AI Meng Meng was taken aback. She immediately walked over and placed the cup in front of He Huan. Ronyu glanced at her and then wanted to say something to He Huan. He Huan said calmly, "I'm a little hungry. I'll go find Qinshan." Just as he stood up, he was shocked by the person behind him. It was Qin Mo. She did not know when he had stood behind her, but he had not made a sound. He Huan looked at him, and he looked back at her. Time seemed to have stopped. The atmosphere was mesmerizing. Ronyu was still sitting and drinking tea. AI Meng Meng walked up to him and wanted to ask something, but he grabbed her arm and pressed her to sit down next to him. Then he glanced at her. So, AI Meng Meng didn't say anything. He Huan and Chinamo looked at each other for a long time, and Chinamo said, "Why are you here?" He Huan bit her lip and said in a low voice, "I'm hungry, so I ran into Ronyu when I went to find Qinshan." Chapter 4652. The expression on Qin Mo's face was still inscrutable. "Are you explaining?" "No," He Huan answered very quickly, and she seemed to be a little guilty. Qin Mo smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. He just said goodbye to Ronyu and left with his men. When he reached the door, he said in a reproachful tone, "How did you disturb him? Ronyu is a patient now." He Huan was actually a little confused. She looked down to calm herself down before looking up. "I'm a patient too." After she said that, Qin Mo placed his hand over her eyes. He said no. He Huan froze for a moment. She wanted to move his hand away, but when she raised it halfway, she dropped it again. She didn't dare to move it away. She felt guilty. Because she saw Ronyu. Because Ronyu had a wife. Because she was sad. To He Huan, missing out on Ronyu was a very regretful thing. Even though she knew that many things had happened in the past, which was why they weren't together, or that she might have fallen in love with Qin Mo, He Huan couldn't remember it now. She was still in the purest memory of when she was 18 years old. She was very sad now. She even wanted to cry, but she didn't dare to. It was too embarrassing. It wasn't that she hadn't cried in front of Qin Mo before, but that was in the past. They all said that she was his wife, so she couldn't get close to him. So no matter how sad she was now, she wouldn't cry in front of him, even though she really wanted to cry. She didn't cry, but her eyes were red. Then, tears rolled down her cheeks one after another. It was very embarrassing because Qin Mo was her husband, but she was crying for someone else. Qin Mo stood there and looked at her hanging head. Every strand of her hair exuded a sense of dejection. His heart ached. The pain was no less than hers. He said hoarsely, "Do you want to find someone else to like?" He Huan wiped her tears away. She wanted to move away, but she couldn't. Finally, she bit her lip. Tell him to go away. He didn't want others to see him crying. She actually wanted Qin Mo to leave, but she didn't dare to. She was afraid that if she annoyed him, he would make some unreasonable demand. So, she just stood there and cried. Qin Mo asked the two bodyguards to leave first, and he took a handkerchief. "Don't cry. Isn't it just Ronyu?" At this moment, his voice was unexpectedly gentle and not rude at all. Even He Huan was a little stunned. She looked up at him cautiously. "You're not angry? If being angry can make you love me again, I can also be angry every day." Qin Mo sighed, his hand holding her small shoulder, gently folding her back into his embrace. He Huan resisted a little. She rested her head on his shoulder and tried to break free, but he was too strong. His voice was hoarse and pleasant to the ear. "If you want to cry, cry in my arms. You're not allowed to go anywhere." She was stunned for a moment. She wanted to raise her head, but he pressed it back down. It was a little rough, but more than that, it was doting. This was a doting method, that He Huan was very familiar with. She used to think that it would never happen again. But now, Chinamo was doting on her like this again. She remembered that when she was 16 years old, she said that she hated him and that she would never like him. After that, he didn't talk to her anymore, and the way he looked at her was cold. Chapter 46-53. Updated quickly. At that time, she secretly liked Rong Yu and collected everything about him. And Qin Mo didn't know about this until Rong Yu was in the hospital. But He Huan had forgotten about this. But Qin Mo didn't forget. He remembered that day when He Huan came to him. At that time, they had nothing to do with each other. The person she liked was Rong Yu. She told him that she would marry Rong Yu in the future. When she came to him, Rong Yu was lying in the hospital in a vegetative state. Only Qin Shun had the confidence to operate on Rong Yu, and he had to wait for the right opportunity. Regarding Qin Mo's love life, Qin Shun knew, so she didn't dare to operate on Rong Yu. Qin Mo had the final say in everything. That day, He Huan barged into the CEO's office of King Entertainment. Qin Mo was in a meeting, and she went to the meeting room. Secretary, he couldn't stop her. Qin Mo was in a meeting, and He Huan opened the meeting room door. The only person who dared to do this and didn't die was He Huan. That was what Secretary he thought to herself. She let out a long sigh and looked at Qin Mo, asking silently. And Qin Mo looked at He Huan indifferently. After a long time, he said softly, "The meeting is over." Secretary he arranged for people to leave. Secretary he knew something was wrong when he saw President Qin's expression, so he smiled and asked the big shots of the company to leave. When everyone had left, he saw He Huan. He sighed again. This young lady wasn't afraid of the CEO at all. Qin Mo's eyes fell on He Huan's face, but he said to Secretary he, "You can leave first." Secretary he bowed and left, closing the door behind him. The air in the office froze after the door was closed. He Huan leaned against the door and looked at Qin Mo quietly. "What should I do for you to save Rong Yu?" she asked him. Qin Mo sat in his seat and glanced at her. Then, he lit a cigarette and smoked on his own. He didn't seem to care about her at all. Speechless, He Huan bit her lip. Qin Mo held a cigarette between his slender fingers. He leaned back and puffed out a cloud of smoke as he looked at her. He had the attitude of a superior, yet he also had the air of a ruffian, giving off a very aggressive feeling. That kind of gaze made He Huan uneasy, and she unconsciously took a step back. Qin Mo smiled faintly and said, "I'm not a doctor. How can I save him?" "He Huan, you think too highly of me." He Huan pursed her lips and said softly after a long time, "I know Qin Shin won't operate on Rong Yu without your permission." She had always been a proud princess, especially in front of Qin Mo. But now, she was begging him to save Rong Yu. Before He Huan came, she actually knew what kind of price she would have to pay, but she wasn't willing to pay until the moment was right. After she finished speaking, Qin Mo smiled faintly and said, "Qin Shun is the one who can save Rong Yu. You should beg Qin Shun. Isn't that right?" He Huan bit her lip, "But I know she will listen to you. If you don't ask, she won't dare to do the operation." Actually, she always blamed Qin Shun in her heart, but she couldn't really blame her. She knew that she was in love with Rong Yu. She used to be with Qin Mo and hugged him. It was very sweet, but she was too afraid of him, so she got together with Rong Yu. Qin Mo had never said anything, but now she was begging him like this, which was too embarrassing. He Huan pursed her lips and waited for his answer. After a while, Qin Mo finally said, "So, are you begging me?" She looked up, and there was a hint of anticipation in her eyes. Qin Mo smiled faintly and said, "Sure, but on the condition that we get married immediately and get our marriage certificate in the afternoon." He raised his hand to look at the time and said in an even calmer tone, "There are about 2 hours before the Civil Affairs Bureau opens in the afternoon. You can think about it. As for lunch, you can have it with me, or you can look for Secretary He." He Huan chose to have lunch with Secretary He without hesitation. Qin Mo looked at her quietly and then said lightly, "That's fine too." He then walked out. He Huan stayed in the meeting room alone for a long time before she bit her lip and walked out. At noon, Chin and Mo sat there alone. Secretary, he came over and looked at his untouched lunch. He said softly, "President Chin, there's an important meeting in the afternoon. Why don't you eat something first?" Chin and Mo looked up at Secretary he and asked in a hoarse voice, "Where is she?" Secretary he smiled and said, "She's fine. She's resting after lunch, but she's always in a daze." Chin and Mo was stunned for a moment and then said in a low voice, "She can still eat. Is she so sure that I'll be soft-hearted?" But she was wrong. He wouldn't be soft-hearted because he only had one chance. If he missed this chance, he wouldn't get another one. So even if she hated him, Chin and Mo wouldn't let go of this opportunity, even if she called him despicable and shameless. Chin and Mo sat quietly for a long time. Time ticked by. Finally, it was 1:30 in the afternoon. It was also the time he had arranged to meet her. Chin and Mo felt that he had never felt so anxious before. It felt like he had waited for a century, and she had finally come. He had waited for her for so long. Chapter 4654. And finally, she was here. Chin and Mo stared into her eyes and didn't move. Hee-Hwan walked toward him step by step. Finally, she walked around the desk and stood in front of him. She stood there and looked up at him. "I've thought about it, Chin and Mo. If you want to marry me, let's get married." He sat there and looked at her quietly. After a long time, he said hoarsely, "Am I the only one who wants to marry you? Hee-Hwan, don't you have any?" He felt a little depressed when he said that. After all, they had been together for so long, and she had looked at him like that before. Women weren't the only ones who were silly. Chin and Mo had been romantic before, and he had thought that they would always like each other. If she didn't like him, she wouldn't have been willing to live with him and wouldn't have allowed him to interfere with her private affairs. If she didn't like him, why would she look at him like that? After so many years, Chin and Mo didn't know what he had done wrong. He had always doted on her and loved her. He thought that girls liked that, but Hee-Hwan only felt that it was a restraint. She liked someone else. He would be lonely for as long as she was with Rongyu. He wasn't in a hurry, because she would have to return to his side eventually. Rongyu wasn't strong enough to give her anything, so Chin and Mo had been waiting. He didn't think that she would really like Rongyu. Maybe he was too confident that he would let it happen even though he knew it. He waited year after year. Until now, he couldn't take it anymore. Hee-Hwan said that she wanted to marry him, and he asked her if she didn't have any feelings for him anymore. Hee-Hwan stared at him for a long time before she gently turned her face away. It was a rejection. Chin Mo's gaze landed on her face. He didn't get an answer for a long time. Finally, he left his seat and walked to Hee-Hwan. Reaching out, he pinched her chin and said hoarsely, "Has he kissed you before?" Hee-Hwan's eyes widened. She was a little scared. Her instincts told her that it was dangerous. She took a step back and instinctively wanted to escape. Chin and Mo, on the other hand, was as strong as ever. He easily restrained her with 2 fingers, not giving her a chance to escape. Hee-Hwan bit her lips, and her eyes were filled with fear. She didn't know what he wanted, so her instinct was to run. Chin and Mo took another step forward. He was already very, very close to her, the tips of his feet touching hers. Hee-Hwan was so scared that he wanted to scream. Chin Mo's fingers slowly moved. He didn't say much and just quietly looked at her as if he was admiring a work of art. A work of art that belonged to him, Chin and Mo. After a long time, Hee-Hwan said in a trembling voice, "Chin and Mo, let me go." "Who's going to let me go?" He smiled faintly, releasing her abruptly. "Go, no matter what. I won't force you to do something against your will." Hee-Hwan was stunned for a moment. Then she instinctively asked him, "Rongyu, why should I help you?" Chin and Mo said sarcastically, "To cure him and watch the 2 of you fly away together?" Hee-Hwan looked hurt. She wanted to give up, but Rongyu was in the hospital. She even thought of waiting for him as long as he didn't wake up. However, Hee-Hwan knew that she couldn't be selfish. She couldn't use someone else's life to fulfill her love. Without true love, how could it be love? Her voice was a little choked. "Let's get married." She was probably afraid that he would say something unpleasant or hurtful again, so she hugged him gently. Then she cried. Chin and Mo lowered his eyes and looked at Hee-Hwan quietly. He thought to himself that she had cried like this when they were about to get married. Now, she had forgotten everything. She cried again when she saw Rong Yu and AI Ming Ming together. When Woody Huan shed a tear for him, quietly, he reached out and wiped away her tears. He said, "He Huan, it's 2019. Everything has to start again." He Huan was in a daze. "Didn't you say that you were hungry?" Qin and Mo smiled gently, not wanting to think about the past. He was also human. He could get hurt, and he never showed his wounds to He Huan. After a long time, she thought that he didn't feel pain. Qin and Mo let out a long sigh. "I'll get someone to get you something to eat." He Huan hummed in acknowledgement. Her nose and eyes were still red, like a bunny's. Qin and Mo led her to the sofa and ordered someone to get her something to eat. He brought a hot towel over and wiped her face with it. He Huan was in pain and cried out, "Qin and Mo, can't you be a little gentler?" He looked down and stared at her. After a long time, he said calmly, "You cried for someone else, and you still want to be gentle? Mrs. Qin won't be gentle this month." He was so shameless. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.